Steelers Nation, it is not game day. It is the bye week for the Steelers, but that doesn't mean it's stressless. I thought it was going to be until the recent news just last night reported by Adam Schefter of ESPN, where the Steelers tried to get a deal done with the Jaguars to trade for wide receiver Christian Kirk until, unfortunately, he broke his collarbone and I believe was placed on IR and he's out for the season. It seems like every single time the Steelers get close to getting a wide receiver, something goes wrong. They tried with Ayuk, and he signed on the dotted line. They tried with Adams, well, barely, but Adams was always going to go back with A-Rod. Now they try with Christian Kirk, and the Jags foolishly play him and cost them of a pick and the Steelers of what would have been a very good wide receiver too.
Yeah, it's like the football gods are watching over the Steelers, and they're just like, yeah, that's not going to work out for you, brother. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, we just have the worst looking receiver.
It's like going through a freaking American Ninja Warrior course just trying to trade for a wide receiver. Like every other team, the Ravens and whatnot, the Jets and whatnot, like it's just easy for them to make a trade for a wide receiver. Like simple, fine, easy, to the point.
Right.
The Steelers, no, they got to go through an obstacle course.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the entire trade deadline as it is 2 days away, but we want to thank you guys for joining us on another edition of the Steelers Culture Podcast where we break down Pittsburgh Steelers football. This episode is powered by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. The trade deadline is in 2 days, man. November 5th is going to be a very important day for a lot of reasons, but in the regards of the Pittsburgh Steelers and any other team in the NFL, the trade deadline is going to be wild. It's going to be crazy, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be heavily open to trading any and all assets. One of them does include some of the options that we have listed, and I'll tell you right now, some of the options listed are literally the bare minimum at this point. We just don't have anyone else out there. Some of them might just end up being rentals
at this point of the season, and considering the Steelers missed out on two of the top available options at the time, it's just they're just nothing but rentals at this point.
And keep in mind, and this is my own personal opinion, anyone that they trade for at this stage of the season, or if they even get somebody, no one that they grab is going to be a needle mover. They are left with just the bottom of the barrel, bare minimum at this point. But some of them could still be better additions. It's advised that the Steelers still try to bolster the wide receiver position.
Well, they're trying.
They are trying. We'll talk about it. But first, we want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video. Huge shout out to BetUS Sportsbook and Casino for sponsoring with us this NFL season. It is just before kickoff for Week 9, so you guys can still put in your wagers for the Week 9 games. Otherwise, if you're watching us during the games or after the games, they still have live wagering on all major sports, which is a great thing. And we've got all these games for Week 9, plus the Monday night game between the Bucs and the Chiefs, which should be interesting. We got Sunday night tonight versus the Colts and the Vikings. So we still got a lot of exciting football to look forward to for Week 9, even though the Steelers aren't playing. Plus, they got every single week of the NFL season, Week 10 and all that. They got a prop builder you guys can use. A lot of cool stuff on BetUS, which I would totally advise you guys using BetUS if you guys are looking for a new sportsbook this season. Take advantage of the great perks they have, which include live wagering on all major sports, fast and easy deposit withdrawal process, 24/7 personalized service every day, and they have a great 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 when you use the promo code YouTube150 when signing up at BetUS.com today, as well as a 125% sign-up bonus on your next two deposits while using that same promo code. Again, at BetUS.com. Sign up today. Huge shout to BetUS for sponsoring with us. Just please gamble responsibly. Now, last night, news broke that the Steelers did try to trade for Christian Kirk. They did have conversations going on with the Jaguars. And then, like we mentioned, he broke his collarbone and is now on IR for the rest of the season. So there goes that option. But not only were the Steelers trying to get a deal done for Christian Kirk, there are even other names that Adam Schefter posted in this article here on ESPN. And I quote, the Steelers were in the process of trying to get a deal done for Christian Kirk, and league sources told ESPN there was a reasonable chance that the Jags wide receiver was going to wind up in Pittsburgh until he broke his collarbone last Sunday. Pittsburgh's hopes of upgrading its receiving corps was derailed, at least temporarily, but the Steelers are not giving up, a league source told ESPN. The Steelers have been making calls and checking on any and all available wide receivers before Tuesday's 4 p.m. Eastern Time trade deadline, including the Jets for wide receiver Mike Williams and the Panthers for wide receiver Adam Thielen, according to league sources. The Steelers will continue pushing in an attempt to improve by the deadline, but they are far from the only team looking to better position themselves for the second half of the season. So, yeah, they tried to get a deal done with Kirk. We know what happened. And now they're looking for Mike Williams, which that has been reported for weeks now, but even before Adams winded up in New York. And now Adam Thielen is the next wide receiver that's being tossed around for the Steelers and potentially landing in Pittsburgh. That is how bottom of the barrel we're going with.
Yeah.
Now, both would be upgrades. We can't discredit that. Anyone that they trade for would be an upgrade. Well, at least I would think so. And it would definitely bolster the wide receiver room because Roman Wilson's still on IR. We don't know if he's going to be back or when he'll actually see any legitimate playing time. Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin have done good the last 2 weeks with Russell Wilson in at quarterback. So we'll get into that later because that's an interesting note to see just what a simple quarterback change could do to what is a weak wide receiver room.
Yeah, of course.
And how they're making plays. So anyone that they add will bolster it for sure, and they could be upgrades. But Mike Williams, it's just a meh addition, you know? And I don't mean to be picky here. It's just one of those things where it's a meh addition to me.
Looking back at what the Steelers tried to do throughout the whole offseason, right? Trying to get Brandon Ayuk. They were through that discussion with the 49ers, back and forth with trade talks.
Even prior to that, we got to go all the way back to when they traded Deontay for Dante.
Yeah.
And listen, like,
well, yeah, that's why they tried to make the Ayuk thing happen.
Like everyone's gonna point back to it. Oh, was that really a good trade by Omar Khan? Well, they got Dante Jackson out of it, who has 3 picks this year, and Deontay didn't want to be here. He needed a change of scenery, and now he winded up back in the AFC North with the Ravens now. So there you have that. But it is definitely hurting this team in the wide receiver room. And Khan did try to make any, and is still trying to make any and all attempts to add and fix that.
Yeah, quote unquote, they've scorched the earth looking for wide receiver. They pretty much called, I'd imagine, every single team, 31 other teams, just trying to see, you know, who's available, if they're interested in talking, if they're interested in trading, and he's still doing so.
Like this is something that he's been trying to fix since March.
But now, you know, they started with Ayuk. We know how that went down. They tried with Adams for a couple weeks. We know how that ended. And now, like, they're at a point where they have to settle for a guy like a Mike Williams or even a guy like an Adam Thielen or maybe a Darius Slayton of the New York Giants.
Yes.
You know, guys like that, you know, guys that are nothing but prime number 2s at this stage of their careers. Probably not even, but, you know.
At this stage of their careers, I don't even know.
But, you know, like, if not that, then depth. Nothing but depth, which, I mean, the Steelers, in the end, they need to improve.
And in most of these cases, potentially just rentals. There would be 8-game rentals. That is it. So anyone that they trade for, it won't cost anything. It would cost a legitimately late day 3 pick, and it might not even be for next year. It could be for a year or 2 down the line. That's how cheap it would be. It wouldn't cost the Steelers anything but a Turner tea from the gas station. So at the end of the day, whoever they trade for won't cost a pretty penny. But they, in most cases, again, would just be rentals. Thielen, 34 years old. Now, he is coming off a very good season with the worst team in the NFL with the Panthers.
Yeah,
he had over 100 yards, 100
receptions, 1,000 yards. Yeah, like last year, he was obviously their best target, and that was when he was 33. You know, he still showcased, even at his age, that he's a capable target, and I do think that he still is to a degree.
At 34, he's still a very solid route runner. His hands have always been reliable.
Now the thing about him now this year is that he hasn't played since late September because of a hamstring injury that left him on IR since then.
Right.
Now, I know he's working his way back. I know he's basically getting healthier day by day, and I don't think he's playing today for the Panthers against New Orleans, but it could be a thing where the Panthers are trying to reserve his health and trying to reserve him, just trying to see, you know, if they can get the most out of Thielen, because the Panthers just need to clean house and just get whatever they can in return.
Yeah, the Panthers already traded Deontay. They're probably going to trade Thielen. There's teams even trying to trade for Bryce Young, bro. Like, the Panthers already just clean house. So Thielen is a very realistic option, especially hearing that Adam Thielen has confirmed that there are talks there.
Yeah.
Thielen wouldn't be a bad option. His age absolutely kind of just makes you turn the other way, but I still think he's a solid receiver at his age. He's a definite great veteran that the wide receiver room could use. He has 2 years left in his contract, so we want to make note of that. There's an opt-out option after this year, which, again, could just make him an 8-game rental. But when healthy, I think he's a very reliable receiver. And with a veteran like Russell Wilson, that could spell good things for the offense. So I don't hate the Thielen addition. Mike Williams, I don't hate it. I just think with Mike Williams at this stage of his season, he's He's so inconsistent and he has injury concerns. And I honestly don't know if the Jets get rid of him because Lazard is now on IR. So do they want to lessen their wide receiver room even more now?
Right.
So those are obviously two realistic options. And if I had to pick between the two, I'm going Thielen, personally.
I'm going Thielen all day, every day, if it were to come down to those two. But there's obviously other options out there that have the Steelers have linked themselves to. I mentioned Darius Slayton earlier in the video. That is a capable number 2. He's been that way ever since he's been a Giant. He's always been Daniel Jones' favorite target.
Slayton has always been underrated, and seeing what he did against the Steelers last week, that's what he brings to the table, man. When he has the chance down the field, he's a deep threat. He's not the flashiest guy, but he is so reliable that I would very much welcome the possibility of Darius Slayton being a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah.
The thing is, he's also in the last year of his contract. He could be just an 8-game rental, unless the Steelers want to sign him after the season. Maybe they give him an 8-week trial, and maybe they sign him cheap next year. So I don't hate that option. If there was any other, because outside of those names, I can't think of anyone else at the moment. Maybe you guys can help in the comments. But out of all the names, Slayton brings me the most intrigue.
Now, other options that have kind of popped up in my head. I've heard talks of KJ Osborne, the current Patriot right now, former Viking. I know he was a decent target for Kirk Cousins when Cousins was a Viking. I wouldn't hate that option, but Osborne hasn't really done anything for the Patriots. Granted, it is the Patriots. Not really anybody is doing anything good over there.
But also, he is in a one-year contract.
Yeah.
So he out of everyone would be the biggest rental.
But another option that I've seen, people have thrown his name out there is Jacoby Myers.
For the Raiders?
Raiders.
The Raiders need to clean house, too.
He's now their number 1, obviously, since Adams was traded. And Jacoby, for the Patriots and for the Raiders, he's always been that reliable hand. He's got the size for it. He's surely got the speed and the hands for it. And he's a guy that just knows how to get into the end zone. Now, I don't know if the Raiders are going to want to trade away Myers because they're going to want targets. But then again, with their quarterback situation, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, they ought to just clean house. They already got rid of Adams, who didn't want to be there. The Raiders are just such a dysfunctional franchise. I would welcome Myers as well. Myers is very much like Slayton to me. He's better than Slayton. He's not the flashiest. He's not going to put up all this crazy yardage, but he is a deep threat. He can make plays in the intermediate, and he has reliable hands. He's always been a very reliable receiver around the league, and he's someone that you trust to get those yardage every single game.
And he's a guy that has 2 years left in his contract for this year and next year for Las Vegas. So if the Steelers want to explore that option of, hey, he could stick around for this year and maybe even next year, we could exercise that option.
The only problem with Myers with me is he has almost $15 million as a cap hit next year. $15 million.
Yeah, but then you look at Christian Kirk's contract. They came close to that trade apparently, and his contract. Next year,
crazy.
Next year, he's expected to get $27 million. So they were trying to make
as a cap hit.
If they were looking to make that move for $27 million, 15 is just it should be nothing to Omar Khan.
It isn't because he was willing to make all this crazy trade and pay all this crazy money for some of the best in the league, and unfortunately they all fell flat. So I don't think any of that is a concern to Khan. They can afford it. They really can.
Now, I've always stated, back from the Ayuk situation, I've always stated that the money is not the issue. The money was never the issue.
If it was the issue, they wouldn't even be in talks.
The issue is the trade capital that he's willing to give up. He's not going to overpay, and he's not going to overspend as far as trade cap goes.
Yeah, he's aggressive to an extent. To an extent.
You always phrase that, he's the one that controls the discussions. He's the one that controls it.
He doesn't crack, he doesn't break for a certain guy, and maybe that's been his fault throughout this entire process is he's not willing to overpay. And maybe that's because he has this long-term vision of, he still has other holes to fix down the line. So he doesn't want to be in the now and just make the move just to make the move.
Yeah.
He's thinking long-term. He doesn't want to overpay, which, again, could just be his biggest downfall. And the Steelers' downfall at this point, because if he did offer more, the Steelers wouldn't be in this position right now. And frankly, the Steelers don't make moves like this, so perhaps every once in a while they can risk to do it. Especially seeing how, if you look at it from a roster aspect, they got a ton of guys on rookie contracts, so perhaps some of the picks they can risk trading away. If they have to trade certain players to get some of those picks back, I think the Steelers can afford that as well. But regardless, Khan just hasn't been able to get the job done. And yes, you are fair to give him criticism for that because he put the Steelers in a bad hole by trading Deontay, who again didn't want to be here. But he it's not a lack of trying. He has tried his damnest. He just hasn't succeeded.
No.
And although you can try. And I gave him credit for the Ayuk situation where he put the Steelers in a position to make a move like this, to get a guy like this. Because the Steelers, man, they never did that before. Colbert never did that. Very rarely, and in recent memory, that was for a guy like Minka. But he never really put the Steelers in a position to make moves like this for elite receivers. And I gave him credit for that. I gave him props. But looking at it now, a couple months removed,
and 2 days away from the actual deadline,
I got to give him criticism for not getting the job done. Like, yeah, cool, we're in position to do it. But if you can't get the job done, what is it worth in the end? It's just one of those things where now we're screwed at receiver.
Yeah. Now,
could we be?
Now we have seen a bit more progression from the wide receivers. Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin's been making more plays week by week, and that's been since Russell Wilson has stepped in at quarterback because he's obviously been cooking for the offense and for the passing attack. Like the passing attack has really benefited since Russ has been in there, and he's a guy that just continues to sling it and just loves to spread the ball around to his targets.
Yeah, and Justin Fields, like, he tried that every now and then throughout the season. Like you saw, Calvin Austin had a great game versus the Chargers. Van Jefferson didn't really have much chemistry with Justin Fields. I mean, they did in training camp in preseason, but clearly that didn't translate. It's just one of those things where Fields wasn't consistent at getting his receivers the chance. Russell Wilson is perfect for that, and we've seen that the last 2 weeks. Van Jefferson had his first touchdown versus the Jets. He's coming off a season high, 62 yards versus the Giants. Calvin Austin is getting all the chances in the world with Russell Wilson, and even our tight ends. Darnell Washington is a big play machine. You don't see it often, but when he's given the chance, he can make the plays down the field. So perhaps at the wide receiver position, looking at it from a month ago and looking at it now, maybe it's not that big of a concern because maybe all the Steelers needed was just a quarterback to give these guys the chances. And huge prop to Jefferson and especially Calvin Austin, who I think at this stage of the season is our wide receiver too, for taking those opportunities and making the most out of it.
Yeah, big credit to those two for, making the plays and really stepping up the past 2 weeks. But the question here is, looking at the second half of the schedule, how tough it's going to be.
Do you still trust those guys?
Can they take that next step? Can they go the extra mile for that? Because the Steelers and the wide receivers going up against the talent that they're going to be going up against, and the teams they're going to be going up against, they surely need extra depth. They surely need an extra hand at wide receiver.
So I'm looking at those past 2 weeks of what Russell Wilson has done with the same receiving core, and it's good. But I'm not just going to sell on that. They still need to bolster the wide receiver room. Whoever they trade for, it's not going to cost anything. It's not going to cost anything crazy. It's going to be super cheap. But depending on who they trade for, it will be potentially just an 8-game rental. But they could still bolster the receiving room heading into the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And I would hope that Arthur Smith and company get the tight ends more involved. That includes Darnell, and that especially includes Pat Frymuth. He just got extended. He needs more targets. He needs more opportunities down the field. He can do it. We've seen it.
Yep.
So get those guys involved more. That'll help with the lack of the receiving room. Najee is a dual threat. Warren is definitely a dual threat. So we have guys to make up for the lack of the receiving room, but they still need to make a trade and they still need to bolster it in some way.
Yeah, based off the guys that we mentioned, if I had to choose one, because it's going to come down to whatever Omar Khan believes is going to be the best guy, for the team to bring in, the best case available. In my opinion, and that's either Adam Thielen, based off his experience and, his capabilities still at his age,
right,
or Jacoby Myers because of what he's done since being in the NFL. But that's just about it.
I'd even say Darius Slayton, if that's realistic.
Darius Slayton's another one, absolutely.
But if we're talking specifically who Adam Schefter has confirmed that the Steelers have had talks with, if you had to give me an option between Williams or Thielen as of now, I'm probably going Thielen. Just being honest with you.
Yeah.
I think him and Russ could be a decent little connection. I think his veteran experience, I think his route running and solid hands could really be nice for this offense, even at his age. When he's fully healthy, I think he's still a very reliable receiver.
Yeah.
So we will see who the Steelers actually trade for, or even if they ever trade for anybody. At this point, I don't know. They got 2 days to do it. We'll see if anything happens. I would advise Tom or Khan and company to make a move. And again, whoever they trade for, it'll be super cheap, but at the same time, it won't be a needle mover. And this is months of discussion, months of speculation, and months of a lot of us getting our hopes up. And at this point, man, if a move happens, cool. If it doesn't, whatever. You know, I didn't get my hopes up anyway. I did for Ayuk. I partially did for Adams.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's just whatever. You know, I'm so drained with the thought or the hope or the false hope of it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where whatever. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I've always went with the mentality of like, if it happens, it happens. I'll believe it when I see it. Kind of thing.
Exactly.
But there's no doubt about it that the receivers are stepping up. Sure, the past 2 games they have, but they still need an extra hand.
Yes, they do.
Especially with the second half of the schedule. Do they do it? I don't know. But time is running out. So is it going to come down to Omar Khan just saying, screw it, finally, you can have this and we'll take him because we really need him? Or is it just going to be one of those, I'll keep trying, but if I don't like the offer, or if they don't like the offer I'm given, I'm just going to settle with what I got.
But that's actually sad that you're saying that, because as you're saying that and as I'm processing that sentence, I'm thinking, wow, we really went from Brandon Ayuk to this.
Yes, we have.
Like, we are so desperate. It is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and it might not take till next year's offseason for the Steelers to really get a big name wide receiver.
Yeah, because whoever they trade for at the deadline, or if they trade for anybody, they won't be any solutions. They will just be an upgrade. Maybe they will bolster the room for this season only. I don't think many of them will remain, or any of them will be permanent solutions. So receiver heading into next season in the draft and free agency is still going to be a necessary fix. Whether that's free agency, whether that's the draft. That's for months from now. But I want to let you know right now, if they trade for somebody, they are not the solution.
So it makes you think, like, do the Steelers even want to trade away whatever capital for a rental?
Well, if it's,
do they want to even if it's for a late round pick, like, do they want to give up any capital for that matter if he's just going to be here for 8 games?
I still would.
I would too. I would still make that move.
It would literally cost like a 2025 6th or 7th. That's nothing. And if anything, the Steelers can trade somebody to get that pick back. We've seen it in years past. Khan did it last year with a lot of guys.
Of course.
With Dotson and Green and whoever else. So Khan can trade somebody to get that pick back if he has to. You know what I mean? So there's options here. They're not crazy. I don't think they're permanent solutions. All I know is next year, wide receiver is still going to be a massive hole. But I would still hope the Steelers make a trade. For the sake of I don't even know at this point. Just make a trade. You know what I mean? That's how desperate we are.
And no, I don't think that Courtland Sutton is an option because Denver just doesn't appear to be willing to give him up, and especially not for pennies. Like, they are very aggressive on what they want in return if they were to give up Sutton. And I don't think the Steelers feel the pressure on that.
You see what Bo Nix is doing right now?
Of course I do.
Why would they trade away Sutton? That's why the Broncos have been so resilient of not trading Sutton.
Yeah.
The Steelers have called and called and called, and they've turned him down every single time.
So I don't think around this time that they're going to budge.
Sutton is not an option, which is why we didn't bring him up here in this video, and I'm glad you mentioned that because...
And not even DK, no, because, the Russell Wilson tie-ins, that's not going to happen. I don't believe that happens.
Nonetheless, let us know your guys' thoughts down below. Is there any other receivers you guys can think of? Because as of now, I can only see Williams, Thielen, Slayton, maybe Myers. I know KJ Osborne's being tossed around. That just sounds absolutely depressing. It does. I can't.
Not a lot of great names out there.
It's rough. So if there's any other names you guys have that you guys want to mention, you guys are hoping for, realistically, please put it in the comments below. We love to hear any other options because at this point we need something. And if they don't trade for a receiver, they're just going to have to ride with what they have. Maybe Roman Wilson comes back from IR, and maybe he finally gets the chance. Who knows?
And that's a big if.
That's a big if at this point. Let us know your guys' thoughts down below. Huge shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Go take advantage of that 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 and 125% on your next 2 deposits when you use the promo code YouTube150 when signing up at BetUS.com today. Take advantage of all those great perks. Enjoy the live wagering on all major sports. Otherwise, you guys enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy Week 9. And we will see if the Steelers make any trade for whether that's receiver or maybe tackle, because I think we all agree tackle is also a big need, and they don't have any depth because they just released Thielen Cook.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing about that. I have no idea what the Steelers are doing as far as tackle depth goes.
So if you guys have any other
names, that's another position they could look at.
Maybe. I would hope so because they have no one there. So if you guys have any other names for that, put that in the comments. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. We'll see what the Steelers do, and at the end of the day, let's just trade for somebody. That's how desperate we are. We will see what happens. Here we go, Steelers.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later. Peace!